used with this Saturn controller, and it's actually superior to use this Saturn controller on Super Street Fighter 2 than is the default Super Nintendo controller. For the purpose of you don't have to use those pesky L&R bumpers. Instead, all 6 buttons are lined up just like the arcade game. Sega, of course, designed the 6-button controller for Genesis, which is pretty much what the Sega Saturn controller is, with the additional L&R, based around its ability to play arcade games. So the Super Nintendo controller, I don't think, was designed around that purpose. Although Super Nintendo did a pretty good job for that, it didn't quite cut it with games like Street Fighter 2, with its more complex and nuanced fighting, kicking and punching with 3 different kinds of kicks and punches. With other fighting games with just 2 worked fine. You know, Samurai Showdown would have worked fine. Of course, the port to Samurai Showdown was not good on the Super Nintendo. But if it were, it would be fine. Although you could play the Samurai Showdown for Neo Geo with the Super Nintendo controller if you wanted, on emulation. So again, I just to show you, I mapped up, down, left, right onto the up, down, left, right buttons on the Saturn controller. I mapped start to the start button on the Saturn controller. I'm going to skip over here to A. Now this is A on the Super Nintendo controller, not A on the Genesis controller. So A is actually here where B is on the Genesis controller. So I have to do it like that. Again, A. I'm mapping B now. B is located where A is located. X is located where Y is located on the Genesis controller. Again, those are inverted. Y is located where X is located on the Genesis controller, and L and R, I think are. I think L is mapped. I think I want L to be here, and I want R to be down here at C. And I'm going to set select to L. Actually, I should probably set it to R. The R bumper. Okay, so I set that. Now I'm going to load Street Fighter 2. I already have Street Fighter 2 loaded, so let's play it with this configuration. I'm going to know if this configuration is right if all the 3 bottom buttons are, I think they're kicks, and the 3 tops are punches, or the other way around. I forget. But all this whole row here should be one kind of move. So I push start. Yeah, let me raise it up. So there's kick, the weakest kick. Here's the, well, Ken wasn't beating me. Too bad I have to fight Ken, one of the harder characters. Here's the medium kick. A little hard here. Not a very good demonstration, is it? Let's reset the game here. That wasn't a good demonstration. Let me put it on easy, the game, so I don't get beat up too fast, so I could show you the move is better. And I'll set it on the easiest. That should give me more flexibility. Good Guile is usually easier than Ken. I got the weak kick. There's the medium kick. You can see slower. And there's the strong, fierce kick, or whatever, the strongest kick. Here's the weak punch. Here's the medium punch. And here's the most powerful punch. So you see here I can push all 3 punches and all 3 kicks at the same time, which is important in some fighting games. It's important in this one, I think, with Dalsim's teleport. I think you need to push all 3 at the same time, if I recall. So this is very, very useful to get that full range. And also just to have all the buttons lined up nice, just like the arcade. So you can play this very much like the arcade. And if you play, instead of with your thumb, like most people do, if you play with a grip like this, which I play, you can really, experience, have more arcade-like experience, and but with a pad, if you like a pad. And I personally like pads better than I do sticks, a lot more. So this is the perfect controller for me. Again, just to show you, it's really hard to play Street Fighter 2 with one hand. I mean, I'm not going to even attempt a super move here. but it works great. So I'm going to shut this emulator off, and I'm going to just test some other controllers and give you a description of them. Now, as in the PlayStation video where I tested 5 different PlayStation 1 controllers, I have, as you see here, 3 other kinds of Saturn controllers. So I'm going to test them on Windows and see if they are function properly according to the Windows game controller window in the control panel. I'm not going to test these each on games, actual games. No, I will give descriptions on these controllers though, and what they are. So this is the second controller. As I described it already in the video, this is the original US released Saturn controller. I got this very cheaply, and I bought it just because I was interested in it. But it really, I mean, if you think the L and R buttons are pretty bad on the Saturn controller, I mean, they are the worst. The other Saturn controller, these are even worse. These are really, really not really too responsive. I mean, you press them and it feels like very little happened. These buttons, I mean, are not as nice, and this D-pad is just really stupid looking. I mean, it doesn't feel like the other D-pad. It doesn't feel terrible though. I don't think this controller is terrible, but it doesn't seem very good. I've not played with it much because I just far prefer this. Again, just to give you the history of this, this was released in Japan when the system first launched, and then I guess this controller was just too good. Sega of America really apparently botched up Saturn. Apparently Saturn was a big fiasco, and Sega lost a lot of market share to Sony. And Sega, Saturn has a lot of great games. A lot of them were not released in the U.S. Instead, U.S. was releasing a lot of garbage games, like the stupid Bug Game and Clockwork Knight and other garbage. When Japan was getting really, really great games, and Sega of America was not porting them to the U.S. for some reason. I don't know why. Probably a lot of American gamers would have liked them. Anyhow, let's go back, instead of really talk about these controllers, let's talk about the adapter and how it functions. So I'll plug this in, go to the menu here, and I have the window already open. And again, I'll move the controller around, up, down, and look at that, it's not reading. Something went wrong here. Didn't sound too good when it went in. Let me try that again. Not sure what happened. I think that's fully connected. Okay, that's working just fine. You can see here it's up, down, left, right, and I'm moving around in circles. Strangely, this thing doesn't seem to be functioning all that properly. Let me close the window and open it. I'm pretty sure this does work. You see the 2 and the 8 are looking like they're depressed, which I don't know why that is. And this button here, B, isn't doing anything. Something's definitely... Let me put this camera down for a moment and play with this a little bit by taking it out and putting it in. This actual plug may need to be clean. I did have this controller working, and I did test it with a game, so I'm not sure why it's not working right now, but if you'll believe me, then you will. At least I think I did. I think this simply may be too dirty and may need cleaning. I also picked this up at a flea market, so it's not in the best of shape. Anyway, this is not functioning right now. I'm going to clean it and resume I'll append this to the end of the video and see if it works. Or after I get it working, I will make the video. I'm sorry for not testing my controller before making the video. Anyway, here's this controller. Let's go to another controller here. And this one definitely works. I had it working just a few months ago. Maybe even 1 month ago. This is a really nice Sega Saturn controller. Now, the D-pad is definitely not as good. It's definitely stiffer, not as nice. Definitely not as nice as the other Sega Saturn pad, that second released one. Getting back actually to this history, I didn't finish this history. Like I said, the U.S. market, Sega America really screwed around, released this at first, and later actually brought the Japanese original Sega Saturn controller to the US as the second model Sega Saturn controller, and I think phased this one out if I believe correctly. This was actually phased out, this clunky piece of junk. I mean, this looks almost like, compared to this looks like that horrible original Xbox One controller. It's this clunky, over big piece of junk. I don't know. And the shame thing is that Sega released this first in Japan, and ended up the American market wants this junk when you had this beautiful, perfect controller, the best controller ever. They decided to release this on the American market. Give the Americans this piece of junk. Like, American gamers are this stupid. Just a real disgrace. Anyhow, we'll go to this controller here. This is actually a really good controller. These sell very cheap online. And I recommend getting one if you have one of these devices or like Saturn, because this device allows you to have turbo on any button. You can set it right with this function button, and this works perfectly. The slow motion function works, but I don't use it. But this function button works, and it works beautifully. And you could set any button here to turbo. I think you could also set it to auto, or maybe not, maybe just turbo. But turbo is rapid fire. Pretty much you depress a button like A. And instead of having, and what it does is it mimics the rapid tapping of A rather than you having to sit and tap the button furiously. The L&R buttons are very responsive. Really, they're nicer than the official Sega Saturn, the nicer one, that is, that Japanese one, pad. These are even nicer. The D-pad's really the only thing lacking. The A, B, C, X, Y, Z buttons are really nice, very responsive, very clicky. And they're all the same shape, which is another thing I really didn't like about the Saturn one, is that these X, Y, and Z buttons are smaller rather than the same shape. But it's really not a big problem. But these are actually the same shape, which is, I think, even nicer. So in certain ways, this controller is actually better. It has, like I said, it has rapid fire, and it has better L&R, but the D-pad simply is not as good. I mean, it just is not nearly as good. This is also a programmable controller. Apparently you could program like Street Fighter 2 moves into this and map them to a single button. I'm not sure what button you want to map them to, though, seeing as you're probably going to need these buttons for certain games. Especially Street Fighter